The summer air hung heavy in Ohio, thick with the scent of freshly mowed grass and blooming flowers. I often found myself staring out the kitchen window, watching the neighborhood children play, their laughter echoing like a distant memory of joy. My husband, Tom, was usually gone by the time I finished breakfast, leaving me to navigate the silence that enveloped our home. He was consumed by work, a relentless pursuit of success that had slowly chipped away at our connection. I reflected on our life together as I washed the dishes, years spent building a family and a life that now felt more like a routine than a partnership. Tom's indifference gnawed at me. He was always busy with meetings or late-night projects. The warmth of his presence had faded, replaced by an emptiness that settled deep within my chest. In search of solace, I signed up for a massage therapy course at the community center. It felt like a small rebellion against the monotony of my days. The first time I laid hands on someone during practice, I discovered an unexpected passion for it. The connection formed through touch was profound. It was an avenue for intimacy that had long been absent from my life. One afternoon, while practicing techniques on my stepson, Jake, everything shifted. He had come over to help with yard work, an attempt to bond with Tom that often fell flat due to his father's absence. As I prepared for our session in the living room, he entered with a casual confidence that made me smile. Jake was 22, just starting to carve out his own path after college. His boyish charm and earnestness reminded me of simpler times. "Ready?" I asked as he settled onto the massage table. "Yeah," he replied, his tone light but his eyes revealing something deeper, a curiosity lingering just beneath the surface. As my hands glided over his shoulders and back, I focused on releasing tension from his muscles. The familiarity of touch brought comfort to both of us, an unspoken agreement that this moment was ours alone. Yet beneath my practiced motions lay an unsettling awareness of boundaries blurring between us. "Your technique is really good," Jake said softly as I worked through knots in his shoulders. "Thanks," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fluttering in my stomach. "I'm still learning." We fell into a comfortable silence punctuated only by the sound of soft music playing in the background. My mind drifted as I continued massaging him, thoughts tangled up in memories of our family gatherings and how different things once were when Tom would join us. Suddenly, Jake shifted slightly under my hands, a subtle movement that sent an electric jolt through me. My heart raced as I tried to maintain focus on my task while battling feelings I hadn't anticipated surfacing so strongly. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly after several moments passed. I hesitated before responding. Guilt washed over me like cold water dousing flames of desire igniting within me. "Of course," I managed to say while holding back emotions threatening to spill over. But then something shifted again. The air grew thick with unspoken tension as our eyes met briefly in the mirror's reflection across the room. In that fleeting moment, something unnameable passed between us, a connection igniting like dry kindling catching fire. "I've been feeling kind of lost lately," he admitted suddenly, breaking our gaze and looking down at his hands resting on the table. My heart sank at his vulnerability. Here we were, two people caught in lives that felt increasingly disconnected from each other and ourselves. "It's tough navigating adulthood," I said gently, wishing to comfort him but aware of how precarious this conversation felt. "Yeah," he sighed heavily before falling silent again. The weight of unspoken words hung palpably between us, an invisible thread binding our experiences together through shared loneliness and longing for connection we both craved yet feared pursuing further. As minutes stretched into what felt like hours during that session filled with palpable tension and uncertainty about boundaries being crossed or held firm, it became clear that this moment would linger long after we parted ways later that day. But just as quickly as it began, the session ended abruptly when Tom unexpectedly walked through the door earlier than usual, his presence shattering whatever fragile intimacy had formed between Jake and me moments before like glass crashing onto concrete floors without mercy or warning. "What's going on here?" Tom's voice cut sharply through the air as confusion morphed into suspicion etched across his face. The reality crashing down around us like waves against rocky shores, threatening to pull us under if we didn't act fast enough to save ourselves from drowning in consequences yet unseen or understood fully. Yet either way we would have no choice but face them head-on soon. Enough whether we wanted or not. Tom's voice sliced through the air, and for a moment, time stood still. I felt my heart race as I turned to face him, my mind scrambling for an explanation that would not betray the tangled emotions swirling within me. Jake remained frozen beside me, his expression mirroring my own shock and fear. "What's going on here?" Tom repeated, his tone sharper now, demanding answers. The weight of his gaze bore down on us, and I could sense the tension thickening in the room. I was just helping Jake with some stretches," I managed to say, my voice sounding feeble even to my own ears. The lie hung in the air like a cloud of smoke, thick and suffocating. Tom's brow furrowed as he crossed his arms over his chest, skepticism etched across his features. "Stretches? At this hour?" Jake glanced at me, a flicker of uncertainty passing between us. We were caught in a web of our own making, a precarious balance between desire and the reality of our situation. "Yeah," Jake chimed in, attempting to salvage whatever remained of our ruse. "Just some exercises for flexibility." His voice was steady but lacked conviction. Tom's eyes narrowed slightly as he scrutinized us both. "I didn't know you were into that sort of thing." His words hung heavy in the air, filled with unspoken implications that made my stomach churn. The guilt clawed at me, an insistent reminder of what I was risking for fleeting moments of connection that felt so right yet so wrong. "Maybe we should talk about this," Tom suggested, his tone shifting from suspicion to something more contemplative. As he stepped closer, I felt a surge of panic wash over me. My mind raced back to the moments before he walked in, the warmth of Jake's hands on my skin during the massage, the way our laughter had mingled with something deeper. A memory resurfaced, one summer evening years ago when Tom had surprised me with a candlelit dinner after weeks of feeling invisible in our marriage. That night had been filled with promises that had slowly faded over time. "I'm tired," I said abruptly, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Can we discuss this later?" Tom hesitated but then nodded slowly as if weighing my words against his instincts. "Fine," he replied finally, though I could tell he wasn't satisfied with my evasiveness. I watched him retreat to the living room while Jake remained beside me, uncertainty etched across his face. "What do we do now?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted softly, feeling lost amidst a storm of emotions that threatened to pull me under once more. Jake took a step closer, his presence warm and inviting despite everything that hung in the air between us, guilt and desire entwined like vines around a fragile trellis. "We can't just pretend this didn't happen." "No," I whispered back as memories of our earlier connection flooded my mind, the laughter we shared during those stolen moments that felt so liberating yet so forbidden. "What if," Jake hesitated before continuing, "what if we kissed?" The suggestion lingered between us like an electric charge waiting to ignite. My heart raced at the thought, an impulsive act that could shatter everything but also offered an escape from the loneliness that enveloped me daily. "Jake," I began but faltered at the weight of what such an action would mean for both of us. "We kissed." The words slipped out before I could stop myself, they hung in the air, a confession tinged with longing and fear. The moment stretched painfully long as we stood there locked in each other's gaze, two people caught between familial bonds and uncharted territories of emotion. What lay ahead felt uncertain yet intoxicating all at once. "I shouldn't have said anything," Jake finally murmured as he took a step back, breaking our fragile connection. "No," I replied quickly, it was too late for regrets now. It's complicated." He nodded slowly as if absorbing my words while grappling with his own feelings, a mix of hope and apprehension swirling beneath the surface like ripples across still water. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Jake said quietly after a pause filled with unspoken tension. Neither do I replied softly. Every word felt heavy with meaning, the weight of choices made and paths not taken pressing down upon us both. We stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity until finally breaking away from each other's gaze, a mutual understanding lingering between us despite everything else looming on the horizon like dark clouds threatening rain. As night fell outside our suburban home in Ohio, a place once filled with laughter now shadowed by secrets, I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was only just beginning, an unraveling thread leading toward unknown consequences waiting just beyond reach. The quiet of the evening enveloped us as we stood in the dim light of the living room, still caught in the aftermath of our kiss. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken words and emotions that had been building for far too long. I could hardly breathe as I wrestled with the implications of what had just happened. My heart raced, a mixture of thrill and fear coursing through me. I shouldn't have done that, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of my marriage pressed down on me like an anchor, reminding me of the vows I had taken, the life I had built alongside my husband. He looked at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But it felt right, he replied softly. There was a sincerity in his voice that pulled at something deep within me, a longing for connection that had been absent for so long. I stepped back, breaking the fragile spell between us. We need to think about this, I urged, trying to regain some semblance of control over my spiraling thoughts. Each moment spent with him blurred the lines between right and wrong, desire and duty. The tension was palpable, it wrapped around us like a thick fog. As days turned into nights, our encounters became more frequent. Each massage session morphed into something more profound than mere physical touch. They were moments where we shared our fears and dreams, layers of our lives peeling away to reveal raw truths beneath. The world outside faded away during those stolen hours, it was just us navigating uncharted waters. Yet with each passing day, guilt clawed at my insides like a relentless beast. My husband worked late hours more often than not, leaving me alone with my thoughts and this burgeoning connection that felt so intoxicating yet so wrong. I tried to push away feelings of shame, but they clung stubbornly to my conscience. One afternoon while preparing dinner, a ritual that once brought comfort, I found myself lost in thought about how different things had become. The smell of sautéed onions filled the kitchen as memories flooded back, laughter shared over meals, quiet evenings spent together on the couch watching television. Those moments seemed worlds away now. My stepson walked in just as I was lost in nostalgia. "Need help?" he asked casually, leaning against the doorframe with an easy smile that sent butterflies fluttering through my stomach. "Just making dinner," I replied automatically, though part of me wanted to invite him closer, to share not just tasks but everything swirling inside me. He stepped forward and began chopping vegetables without waiting for an answer. Our movements synced easily as if we were two parts of a whole, a strange sensation that both thrilled and terrified me. "Do you ever think about what could be?" he asked suddenly, glancing up from his task with an intensity that made my heart skip a beat. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly, I felt exposed under his gaze. Us." He gestured vaguely between us as if trying to encompass everything we shared in those fleeting moments together. I hesitated before responding, my mind racing through consequences and morality like a whirlwind. "It's complicated," I finally said, trying to keep my tone steady even as uncertainty loomed large over us both. "Complicated doesn't mean it has to end," he countered gently but firmly, his eyes searching mine for clarity. Our conversation hung in the air like an unfinished painting, vivid yet incomplete, each stroke adding depth but also chaos to what lay before us. Just then, the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke through our bubble. It was unmistakable, the sound of my husband's car pulling into the driveway. Panic surged through me like ice water coursing through my veins. "You need to go," I urged urgently as dread settled heavily in my stomach. "I can't just leave things like this," He protested quietly but moved toward the back door nonetheless. Please. My plea was desperate. There was no time for further discussion or reflection on what we were becoming together. It all felt too fragile now under the looming shadow of reality crashing back into focus. He slipped out just as my husband entered through the front door, his presence filling the space with familiarity tinged by unease. Hey there. Smells good, he called out cheerfully as if nothing was amiss. I forced a smile onto my face despite everything churning inside me. It felt like wearing a mask designed for someone else entirely, a facade hiding turmoil beneath its surface. How was work? I asked casually while stirring pasta sauce on the stove, a mundane question masking deeper questions swirling within me about loyalty and desire clashing against each other like opposing forces battling for dominance over my heart. It went well. Got some good news today. He leaned against the counter casually while reaching for a piece of bread from our dinner table, a gesture so normal yet layered with tension beneath its surface that made every bite feel heavy somehow. What kind of news? He paused for a moment before answering thoughtfully, there's talk about a promotion coming up soon. His eyes sparkled with excitement, an enthusiasm that should have made me happy but only deepened my internal conflict instead. Was this what happiness looked like? Or was it merely another layer obscuring deeper issues festering beneath? That's great. I managed to say while forcing cheerfulness into every syllable despite feeling anything but joyful inside, the weight pressing down heavier than ever before now threatening to crush whatever remained intact within our family dynamic as secrets threatened exposure at any moment. Dinner passed uneventfully enough, small talk-filled gaps where silence threatened to invade too deeply, but every laugh felt strained somehow, as if laughter itself carried whispers echoing doubts lurking just out of sight waiting patiently until they could strike when least expected. Afterward, when we settled down on opposite ends of the couch watching some mundane show playing softly in front of us, I couldn't shake off feelings gnawing away at me relentlessly. Would this charade continue forever? How long could we pretend nothing had changed? As night fell outside again casting shadows across familiar corners, the darkness seemed alive somehow pulsing around us filled with unsaid words lingering heavily waiting desperately for release. And then came another knock at fate's door, an unexpected twist waiting just beyond reach. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a wild animal. I could hear the rain slapping against the windows, each drop a reminder of the chaos brewing in my heart. We sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, our bodies close yet worlds apart. The weight of our choices hung heavy in the air, an unspoken truth that threatened to shatter the fragile bubble we had created. I glanced at him, my stepson, his face illuminated by flashes of lightning. In those moments of brightness, I saw not just his youth but also the confusion swirling within him. What do we do now? He asked softly, breaking the silence that had enveloped us like fog. I wanted to reach out and soothe his fears, but my own anxieties clawed at me. We take it one day at a time, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth was that I didn't know what tomorrow would bring or if we could continue this precarious dance we had started. The power flickered and then went out completely, plunging us into darkness. I could feel my heart racing as I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight. The glow illuminated his features, his eyes wide with uncertainty and something deeper that sent shivers down my spine. We can't keep doing this, he said suddenly, his voice steadier than I felt. What happens when he comes home? I turned away from him, looking out into the stormy night. My husband would be back soon. He had been away for days on business and was due any moment now. The thought sent a jolt of panic through me. I don't know, I admitted. The silence stretched between us again as thunder rumbled overhead. In that moment of vulnerability, it felt as if everything else faded away, the world outside our little cocoon ceased to exist. Lauren, he said softly, and I turned to face him again. I don't want to lose you. His words hung in the air like a fragile promise. My heart twisted painfully as I considered what lay ahead for both of us if we continued down this path. But there was something intoxicating about being wanted, about feeling alive in ways I hadn't in years. "I don't want to lose you either," I confessed, the truth spilling from my lips before I could catch it. He moved closer then, our knees touching beneath the blanket. The warmth radiating between us felt electric, a stark contrast to the cold reality waiting just outside our door. As another flash of lightning illuminated the room, something shifted within me. Maybe it was desperation or longing. Perhaps it was simply an overwhelming need for connection that drove me forward. Before I knew it, our lips met, softly at first, and then with more urgency as if we were trying to drown out all the noise around us. But just as quickly as it began, fear clawed its way back into my mind like an unwelcome guest. What were we doing? This couldn't last, it shouldn't have happened at all. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house, a tree branch snapping under the weight of rain and wind outside, and broke our moment like glass shattering on concrete. We pulled away from each other instinctively as though burned by an unseen flame. My breath quickened as reality settled back around us like a heavy cloak. "I should go," he murmured after a long pause filled with uncertainty and regret. "No." The word escaped before I could stop myself. Desperation seeped into my voice like ink spreading across paper. "Stay with me." He hesitated but didn't move away completely, caught between duty and desire in this tumultuous storm that mirrored our emotions so perfectly. And so we spent the night together, not in any romantic sense but rather wrapped up in each other's presence amid swirling doubts and fears that loomed larger than life itself. It felt safe here in this darkness where no one else could see us or judge what we were becoming together. Morning light broke through eventually, a soft glow illuminating everything with clarity yet bringing with it an overwhelming sense of dread about what lay ahead once daylight returned fully to our lives. "I have to go," he said quietly after what felt like hours spent lying there side by side, our fingers interlaced despite everything swirling around us threatening to pull us apart once more. "Okay," my voice trailed off weakly. There was no fight left in me today, not against him nor against myself anymore either. As he slipped out of bed quietly while trying not to disturb anything around him, our shared secret still hanging heavily between us, I couldn't shake off how wrong everything felt yet how right it seemed all at once too. The door creaked open slowly behind him, revealing sunlight spilling into our sanctuary, illuminating shadows lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently for their moment when they would pounce mercilessly upon unsuspecting souls caught unawares. And then came another sound, the unmistakable rumble of tires crunching over gravel outside signaling his return home after days away. Panic surged through me anew like icy water flooding every crevice inside. I scrambled out from under covers feeling exposed naked even though nothing had changed physically about me except perhaps how much more aware now than before. What would happen next? Would he notice anything different? Would he sense this tension hanging thickly around us still? I stood frozen, momentarily caught somewhere between hope and despair, knowing fully well nothing would ever be quite right again after today. The day dragged on, each minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. I busied myself with household chores, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting shadows that danced across the countertop, but they did little to lighten the heaviness in my heart. My husband, Mark, had been unusually attentive lately, asking about my day and offering to help with dinner. His kindness felt foreign and disconcerting. As I chopped vegetables for a salad, I caught myself glancing at the clock. Time seemed to mock me, each tick reminding me of the moments I had shared with my stepson, Jake. The guilt gnawed at me like a persistent ache. How could I reconcile these feelings? "Hey, can I help?" Mark's voice broke through my thoughts. He stood in the doorway with an apron tied around his waist, a smile on his face that felt both comforting and unsettling. "Sure," I replied, forcing a smile as I slid the knife into the cutting board. "Just making a salad." He moved closer, taking over the task of slicing cucumbers with surprising skill. "I've missed this," he said lightly. "Us spending time together." I nodded but felt a lump form in my throat. The warmth of his presence only intensified my internal conflict. Each laugh shared over mundane tasks reminded me of what had been lost between us, what I had sought elsewhere. After dinner, Mark suggested we watch a movie together. As we settled onto the couch, I felt an overwhelming sense of discomfort wash over me. The familiar rhythm of our evening routine was like a ghost haunting our home, familiar yet painfully distant. "I was thinking we could go to the summer festival this weekend," he said suddenly, glancing at me expectantly. The festival was an annual event in our town filled with laughter and music, a celebration that usually brought us together as a family. But now it felt like an unwanted reminder of everything that was slipping away from me. "I don't know," my voice trailed off as uncertainty flooded my mind. "Come on," he pressed gently. "It'll be fun." I forced a smile, but inside I was battling turmoil. The thought of being there while grappling with my feelings for Jake made my stomach churn. Later that night, after Mark had gone to bed, I found myself staring out into the darkness through our bedroom window. My phone buzzed beside me, a message from Jake, "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I typed back, "Is everything okay?" "I just need to see you." The urgency in his words sent shivers down my spine. A part of me wanted to dismiss it entirely, another part craved that connection we had forged amid all this chaos. Before long, I stood outside on the porch under the soft glow of the moonlight, waiting for him to arrive. The air was thick with anticipation and regret as memories flooded back, the stolen kisses and whispered confessions during those moments when everything else faded away. When Jake finally appeared at the edge of our yard, his silhouette framed against the dim light made my heart skip a beat. He approached cautiously, his expression serious yet vulnerable. "I didn't want to wait until tomorrow," he said quietly as he stepped closer. "What's going on?" My voice barely rose above a whisper as anxiety tightened around me. "I don't think we can pretend anymore," he confessed urgently. "I care about you more than this secret." The weight of his words hung between us like an unspoken promise and threat all at once. "Jake, this isn't right," I managed to say despite every part of me wanting to pull him closer. "I know it's complicated," he replied earnestly, stepping even closer until there was barely any space left between us. "But what we have is real." In that moment, all rationality faded away as emotions surged within me, confusion mingled with desire and fear intertwining like vines choking out reason itself. Before I could process what was happening next or even take a step back from this precarious edge we were teetering on, he reached for my hand and squeezed it tightly as if anchoring himself against uncertainty. "I don't want you to go back to pretending everything is fine," he said softly but firmly. The intensity in his gaze made it difficult for me to breathe. It drew out feelings buried deep within, a longing for connection that transcended familial boundaries yet threatened everything around us if exposed. "Jake," my voice faltered under pressure, every instinct screamed at me to pull away while simultaneously yearning for him not to let go. But before another word could escape either of us or any decision could be made about our tangled lives, a noise broke through. The unmistakable sound of tires crunching gravel echoed from down the street, followed by headlights sweeping across our yard, illuminating both our faces in stark clarity. Panic surged through me as realization set in. Mark must be home earlier than expected from work, his usual late nights disrupted by some unforeseen circumstance. And suddenly all those feelings swirling between Jake and myself felt perilously close to being exposed under harsh scrutiny if caught at this moment. "What do we do?" Jake whispered urgently as fear flashed across his features, mirroring mine perfectly. Two souls caught amidst chaos, unable yet unwillingly drawn together by something neither fully understood nor controlled anymore. And then there was only silence between us, heavy with unspoken fears while time stood still waiting for whatever would happen next. The inevitable confrontation looming just beyond reach, ready to unravel everything we'd woven so carelessly into existence thus far. The summer festival buzzed around me, a cacophony of laughter, music, and the smell of fried dough wafting through the air. I had hoped that immersing myself in the vibrant atmosphere would distract me from the turmoil churning inside. Yet, every familiar face seemed to draw me back into memories I was trying to escape. I wandered through the crowd, clutching a paper cup filled with lemonade, its tangy sweetness failing to lift my spirits. Children darted past me, their faces painted with joy, while couples strolled hand in hand, oblivious to the weight of unspoken words that hung over my heart. I caught sight of an old friend from high school, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of nostalgia. But as she approached with a bright smile and open arms, reality crashed back in. "Lauren. It's been ages. How's married life treating you?" she asked cheerfully. "Busy as always," I replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. The truth was too complicated to share. It would take too long to explain the distance that had grown between my husband and me. As we chatted about mundane topics, kids, work, life, I couldn't shake off the gnawing guilt creeping in at the edges of my mind. Jake was here somewhere in this crowd, I could feel it. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. My heart raced at the mere idea of seeing him again after our last encounter. Just then, I spotted him across the square, laughing with friends and animatedly gesturing as he spoke. He looked so carefree and youthful among his peers, completely unaware of the storm brewing within me. The sight ignited a pang of jealousy. He seemed so happy without me. My eyes narrowed when I noticed another girl beside him, a pretty blonde with sparkling eyes who leaned in closer than necessary as she laughed at something he said. A knot tightened in my stomach. Wasn't it enough that I was struggling with these feelings? Now I had to watch him share moments with someone else? A wave of bitterness washed over me as I turned away from the scene unfolding before me. I needed air, space to breathe without feeling suffocated by emotions that threatened to drown me. As I made my way through the throng of festival-goers, clutching my cup tightly as if it were an anchor holding me steady against the tide of confusion within, I felt an unexpected presence behind me. "Lauren," came a familiar voice, a voice that sent chills down my spine for all the wrong reasons. I turned slowly to find Mark standing there, his expression unreadable amidst the festive chaos surrounding us. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, feigning surprise even though part of me had expected him to show up eventually. "I wanted to surprise you," he said simply. "Thought we could enjoy some time together." My heart sank further into uncertainty. This was not what I needed right now, not when everything felt so precarious already. "I'm just catching up with some friends," I replied weakly. He nodded but didn't look convinced. "You seem distant today." "I'm fine," I insisted too quickly. Mark studied me for a moment longer before shifting his gaze toward where Jake had been standing moments ago. "Is everything all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "No ghosts here," I said sharply before forcing myself to soften my tone. "Really, it's just busy." His brow furrowed slightly but then he smiled again, a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's grab some food then, it'll be fun." Before I could respond or protest further, before all those complicated feelings could swirl back into focus, he took hold of my arm gently and led me away from where Jake had been standing moments ago. As we walked through rows of stalls selling handmade crafts and local delicacies, laughter echoed around us like distant thunder rolling across an open field, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. "Look at this!" Mark exclaimed suddenly as he pointed toward a booth adorned with colorful balloons and games for children. The sight tugged at something deep within, the family we once were before everything began unraveling beneath our feet. "Remember when we brought Jake here for his birthday?" he asked wistfully. I nodded absent-mindedly while thoughts raced through my mind, thoughts about how different things felt now compared to those innocent days filled with laughter and warmth before secrets began creeping into our lives like shadows at dusk. But just as nostalgia threatened to pull me under again amidst memories woven into every corner of this festival, the sound of laughter caught my attention once more. Turning instinctively toward its source brought everything crashing back into clarity. There stood Jake again, but this time holding hands with that same blonde girl from earlier. Their faces lit up with shared joy while mine felt like stone caught in an unyielding current dragging me deeper down into despair. "What's wrong?" Mark asked, suddenly noticing my change in demeanor as he followed my gaze toward them, both now lost in their own world devoid of any awareness about what lay just beyond their bubble. A bubble where guilt intertwined dangerously close alongside desire, blurring lines drawn long ago between right and wrong. "Nothing," came out almost too quickly again, despite every instinct screaming otherwise, every fiber urging caution against pretending any longer. While watching them together left nothing but bitter remnants echoing against walls built on fragile trust, teetering precariously above dark waters below, waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to dive headfirst into chaos once more. And yet here we were, two lives intertwined by circumstance yet drifting further apart than ever imagined possible, all while standing mere feet away from one another under this canopy filled with laughter, masking truths hidden beneath surfaces polished bright only by daylight's glow. In that moment, surrounded by joy ringing hollow against heavy silence between us both, the realization settled like lead upon my chest: nothing could stay hidden forever. Not when love tangled alongside betrayal, waiting patiently, lurking just out of sight, ready for its moment when everything would come crashing down around us. The laughter of children and the chatter of festival-goers enveloped me, yet a profound silence echoed within. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The vibrant colors of the festival seemed to blur around me, as if the world had shifted into a muted palette that reflected my inner turmoil. My husband, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, chatted animatedly with an old friend nearby. I glanced over at my stepson, who was caught up in conversation with a group of his peers. His laughter rang out, bright and unrestrained, but it felt like a distant echo, a reminder of what I had entangled myself in. The joy surrounding us felt like a cruel joke. As I turned away, I overheard snippets of conversation from a couple nearby discussing promotions and career advancements. My husband's name came up in their chatter, and I froze, straining to catch every word. "Did you hear? Mark's up for that promotion," one man said, his voice low but filled with excitement. "Yeah, but it means more time away from home," the other replied. His wife must be thrilled. A chill ran down my spine. Thrilled? Hardly. The thought of him spending even more time at work made my stomach churn. It would only deepen the chasm between us, a chasm I had already begun to fill with secrets and longing for connection elsewhere. I turned back toward my stepson just as he caught my eye. A flicker of understanding passed between us. We were both acutely aware of the tension that hung in the air like an uninvited guest at this celebration. He stepped away from his friends and approached me slowly. "Hey," he said softly, his voice barely audible above the din. "Hey," I managed to reply, forcing a smile that felt brittle on my lips. "I saw your husband talking to those guys," he continued cautiously. "He seems happy." "Does he?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. We stood there for a moment, two people caught in an emotional limbo neither wanted to acknowledge but couldn't escape either. "I don't want to hide anymore," he finally said, his gaze piercing through me with an intensity that made my heart race, both with fear and excitement. "What do you mean?" I asked, though deep down I understood perfectly well what he was hinting at. "I mean, us." He hesitated before continuing. "I don't want this to be just something we keep secret." My breath hitched as uncertainty washed over me like cold water. "But what about everything? What about your father?" His expression hardened slightly at the mention of my husband's name but softened again almost instantly as he reached for my hand, a gesture that felt both comforting and dangerous. "I care about you," he said simply. "More than I should." The weight of those words settled heavily between us like an anchor pulling us deeper into murky waters we had both chosen to explore yet never fully understood. Before I could respond, we were interrupted by a loud cheer erupting from nearby, a game booth where people were trying their luck at winning prizes. The moment shattered like glass around us, reality intruded once more with its harsh edges and reminders of our circumstances. "I need some air," I murmured abruptly, pulling away from him instinctively as if breaking free from some unseen tether that bound us together in this chaotic moment. I walked away quickly through the crowd, desperate for space to think, to breathe, away from eyes that might see too much or understand too little about what was unfolding beneath this facade we wore so carefully for everyone else. As I wandered further into the festival grounds, surrounded by laughter and festivity that felt increasingly alien to me now, unease settled heavily on my shoulders like an unwelcome cloak. Each step echoed with doubts about choices made in fleeting moments of vulnerability and connection, and doubts about what lay ahead if things continued on this path. Then suddenly, like a thunderclap amidst clear skies, I spotted him again. Mark was coming toward me through the throng of people with purpose written all over his face. My heart raced not from excitement but dread. It was too soon for confrontation, not now when everything felt so precarious already. "What are you doing here?" His tone was light but concerned as he approached me cautiously. "I just needed some air," I replied vaguely while avoiding eye contact. Every fiber of my being screamed at me not to reveal anything more than necessary right now. He studied me closely for what felt like an eternity before finally asking quietly, "Is everything okay?" "Of course." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue even as it left my lips unbidden. The truth remained tangled within layers too complex for simple explanations or reassurances. His gaze flickered toward where our son stood not far off, still mingling among friends before returning back to meet mine again. Something unspoken passed between us, an understanding perhaps, but it only intensified the knot tightening within me further still. And then it happened, just when I thought perhaps we could navigate this turbulent sea together without capsizing. The world tilted once more as another unexpected figure emerged from behind Mark. Our neighbor Linda, who had been watching everything unfold from her spot nearby all along. "Oh, there you are," she exclaimed cheerfully as she approached us with her usual exuberance, completely oblivious, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, the tension crackling around us like static electricity ready to spark into flames at any moment now. "I've been looking everywhere," she continued without pause, launching into stories about her own family's plans for summer vacation while completely missing how frozen both Mark and I had become under her relentless chatter. Each word she spoke felt like nails driving deeper into an already fragile situation, a reminder that secrets have a way of unraveling despite our best efforts to keep them tightly wound within safe confines. And then just beyond Linda's shoulder, my eyes met those of my stepson, who stood watching intently, still cloaked within shadows cast by lights overhead. His expression mirrored all too clearly how close we were standing on this precipice teetering between desire and destruction. In that moment, surrounded by laughter echoing hollow against heavy silence, I understood nothing could stay hidden forever. Not when love tangled alongside betrayal, waiting patiently, lurking just out of sight, ready for its moment when everything would come crashing down around us. The laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence that wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. My heart raced as I turned to face my stepson, the warmth of our shared moments now overshadowed by the looming presence of my husband. The tension was palpable, it crackled in the air, thick and unyielding. "Mom," his voice broke through the stillness, barely above a whisper. I could see his eyes searching mine for reassurance, for understanding. But how could I offer him anything when everything felt so precariously balanced? "Just give me a moment," I managed to say, my voice shaking slightly. The laughter from the festival outside seemed distant now, as if it belonged to another world entirely, a world where secrets didn't fester and relationships didn't hang by a thread. I glanced back at the door, half expecting my husband to walk in at any moment. The thought sent a jolt of panic through me. What would happen if he did? Would he see the truth written across our faces? Would he understand the depth of our connection that had grown in the shadows? The door creaked open slowly, and I held my breath as my husband stepped inside. His eyes darted between us, confusion etched across his features. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. I opened my mouth to speak but found no words. My mind raced with possibilities. How could I explain this tangled web of emotions? How could I articulate the loneliness that had driven me into this situation? My stepson shifted slightly beside me, uncertainty mirrored in his expression. "Dad," he began tentatively, but my husband cut him off. "Don't dad me. What is happening?" His voice rose slightly, revealing an edge of hurt beneath his anger. I took a step forward, desperate to defuse the situation. "It's not what you think," I said quickly. "We were just..." "Just what?" he snapped back at me. "Just having a moment together? Do you think I'm blind?" The accusation hung in the air like a dark cloud ready to burst. "No," I exclaimed, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "It's complicated." The words felt inadequate even as they left my lips. My husband's gaze hardened as he looked between us again. "Complicated? You're telling me that you can't just be honest about what's happening here?" I glanced at my stepson. There was fear in his eyes that mirrored mine. We were both caught in this storm of emotions, fearful of losing everything we had built while simultaneously grappling with what we wanted most. "I never meant for this to happen," I finally said, each word heavy with regret. "But you've been so distant lately, Anne. And you thought it would be okay to seek comfort in your stepson?" He shook his head incredulously. "That's your excuse?" "It's not an excuse." My voice wavered under pressure but held firm against his onslaught. "You've been gone so much, we've barely spoken." His expression softened for just a moment before hardening again into disbelief and betrayal. "So you decided to betray your marriage instead?" The weight of those words hit me like a physical blow. They cut deep into my heart where guilt had already taken root and thrived amid longing and loneliness. "I didn't plan this," I whispered fiercely, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over at any moment. The silence stretched between us like an unbridgeable chasm filled with unspoken thoughts and accusations. My stepson shifted again beside me. It was evident we were both trapped under scrutiny, the consequences of our actions hanging heavily above our heads. "I can't believe this," my husband finally muttered under his breath as he turned away from us both, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I felt an ache deep within me. It was more than just sorrow. It was desperation mingled with fear for what lay ahead if we didn't find some way out of this tangled mess. "You don't understand," my stepson said suddenly, stepping closer to confront his father directly now, a brave move fueled by emotion rather than logic. "Understand what?" My husband shot back sharply as if trying to shield himself from whatever truth lay ahead. "That she needed someone," he replied quietly but firmly, a plea wrapped in vulnerability that echoed through the room like an unexpected confession amid chaos. My heart pounded painfully at those words. They were true yet tainted with betrayal, a reminder of how far we'd strayed from our original intentions amidst all-consuming desire and confusion. "You think this makes it better?" My husband glared at him now with renewed fury mixed with disbelief that only seemed to amplify every tension-filled moment between us all. "No." My stepson raised his hands defensively but continued speaking anyway despite the danger surrounding our conversation like live wires ready to spark chaos anew. "But she deserves someone who cares." The finality of those words hung heavily between us as reality crashed down upon us all like waves against jagged rocks. The truth laid bare before us without any pretense left intact anymore. My husband stared at both of us incredulously before shaking his head slowly as if trying desperately not only comprehend but also process everything unraveling right before him, his world shifting beneath him while ours teetered on collapse. And then came silence once more, a silence so loud it drowned out everything else until finally breaking apart under pressure when he spoke again softly yet firmly, "You both need to leave." Those words landed heavily within me. They echoed against walls once filled with warmth, now reduced merely down memories tinged bittersweet by betrayal, all leading toward inevitable consequences none could escape anymore. "We need time apart," he added quietly after another long pause stretched painfully thin between us, three souls entangled within choices made long ago, spiraling ever further beyond control. Time apart. The phrase lingered ominously in my mind as reality settled uncomfortably around me like chains binding tighter each passing second. And then came realization crashing down upon me. Nothing would ever be the same again, not after tonight. Not after everything exposed beneath flickering lights, illuminating shadows cast across fragile hearts caught within turmoil, waiting patiently, lurking just outside, ready for its moment when everything would come crashing down around us.